個性捨てたら死んでるのと一緒だよ。りょうさん。
Bocchi the Rock is one of the few shows I've seen in my life that gave me very mixed emotions watching it for the first time. A very innocent looking show on the outside with a premise I would normally rebuke, but somehow made me interested enough to give it a chance. And I'm so happy I did. The music-based 4-panel manga Bocchi the Rock released its anime adaptation on October 9th of 2022 by Studio Cloverworks. With little to no promotion, it was only hardcore fans of the ongoing series by Aki Hamaji who were excited for the upcoming adaptation. It was only after the first couple episodes people started to pick up on this hidden gem, and when cute anime girls with decent animation are presented anywhere, it will blow up sooner or later. Having reached its peak almost a month after its initial launch, it gained a lot of traction from both people who enjoyed it and...
No one is that socially awkward. I'm sorry, not even anime fans. And that's stooping low.
Nah, I love this dude, but this take was not it. Bocchi the Rock follows our main character Gotou Hitori, or Bocchi, who is a girl with extreme social anxiety to the point where she struggles with normal day-to-day interaction. One day she watched a band on TV where one of the members shared her experience and said that through music, even introverted people have a place. Bocchi would dedicate herself to playing the guitar for 3 years straight, somehow hoping that friends would appear out of thin air as long as she kept on practicing. When taking her guitar to school with the hope that someone would talk to her, she got run up on by this blonde-haired girl named ijichi Nijika who dragged her with her to the livehouse story as their band gravely needed a guitarist. And with that, her musical journey in Kesoku band started, including 2 more members in Yamada Ryo and Kita Ikuyo. There is definitely some Yuri going on over there, so keep that in mind. The show likes to paint a picture that the musical aspect is the main focus of the story. The characters grow through the music, all sharing similar goals to become a proper band. But in reality, this is not the case. The music is just a frame holding together all the different pieces when the actual focus is placed mainly on Bocchi's struggle and development. Bocchi is one of those shows where there's a very clear divide between those who enjoy it and those who don't. One of the main critiques the show receives is the fact that it's not realistic. No one is that introverted. First of all, well, duh, it's an anime, and second of all, Bocchi is not introverted. That's a bit of a lie, but let me explain. Many people like to use introverted and social awkwardness interchangeably as if they were the same thing. The main problem Bocchi is facing is her extreme social anxiety, which is an actual mental disorder compared to the personality trait introversion. Social anxiety is the intense and persistent fear of being watched or judged in normal day-to-day activities like interacting with people, trying to hold small talk, or even just messing up in conversations that only exist in your mind. It's the consistent thought of, what if I'm doing this wrong, or what if they dislike me based on this, even if there's no substantial evidence to prove it. I think everybody to some extent has experienced anxiety, whether it be doing a presentation in school or performing in an event of some kind, to know the eerie feeling eating away at you no matter how much you have prepared. Even if you know all the necessary information or techniques to perform without any mishaps, you find yourself stumbling over your words or messing up moves you have done 1,000 times over. Take that feeling and insert it into every situation you face in your normal life. Going grocery shopping, being approached by strangers and so on, something so easy and obvious becomes a Herculean task for Bocchi. And it's not like she's not aware of this. Bocchi knows that this is not what her peers around her experience, which in result isolates her even more. She feels like there's something wrong with her, almost like she's broken and needs to fix herself to become normal. It's the struggle of wanting to reach this normal state, but not having the emotional or mental capacity to do so. And I think this is the part that frustrates a lot of people. It's impossible to put yourself in a mental position that you have never experienced before, and because of the show's lighthearted vibe, Bocchi almost becomes an annoying element to an otherwise fun comedy anime. It's almost like she disrupts the smooth pace the show have set when she gets overwhelmed or stressed. A mental disorder like this one is not easy to relate to if you have no experience with it. It's not like a sad show where you can get emotional even if you haven't watched your parents die by the hand of a demon lord, or a romance anime where you can get jealous that you don't have what they have even if you've never been in love. It's an uncomfortable mental place to be in, so even people who have experienced this might dislike the show because of the bad memories connected to it. Introverts share many similar traits on the outside to socially anxious people. They like to be left to their own devices and thrive in their own company. Did you catch that? Introverts thrive in their own company. They don't mind being alone, in fact many even prefer it. Staying in the comfort of their own space, doing activities they prefer alone and feel more relaxed and happy during these circumstances. They necessarily don't have a problem interacting with other people, but rather just avoid it. When getting into sudden conversations, they have no problem disengaging from them to return to the otherwise low communication lifestyle. As mentioned before, introversion is a personality trait, not a mental disorder. Being introverted or extroverted comes down to mostly environmental factors. Parents with a highly social, fast-paced lifestyle may raise more extroverted children, while those who grew up in a more peaceful environment with fewer social stimuli tend to be more introverted. This natural pull towards solitude is not inherently negative, but often mischaracterized as socially inept or emotionally distant, which couldn't be further from the truth. They simply find fulfillment in less stimulating social environments. Yamada Ryo is that introvert in Bocchi the Rock. At first glance, she may seem like a slightly more socially adept version of Bocchi, but as the show progresses, the difference between the two characters become apparent.
じゃじゃーん。
Ryo is a broke fat-ass bassist who has no problem shamelessly leashing off others, something Bocchi would mentally collapse just thinking about. When she needs something or wants to do something, she has no problem expressing those thoughts with little to no care what other people think of her. She had no problem telling Bocchi that the lyrics she worked super hard on was not the right fit for the band and motivated her to let her own feelings and views into the lyrics instead. While many would think this was just her being nice, just remember that this is the same person that leaves socially anxious girls to pay her own bill, eat weeds straight from the branches, and blushes when she gets roasted.
どこが褒め言葉に聞こえた？
She might not be the brightest, but we love her either way. What makes Ryo compelling is her strong sense of self. Her strong ideals and character define her, never bending or wavering for the pleasure of others. She chose to walk away from the band she always dreamed to be a part of when her ideals began to diverge from those of her former bandmates. Meanwhile, Bocchi wants other people to influence her, hoping it will fix what she perceives as her faults. A massive difference between two characters which both can be labeled introverts. Ryo remains calm and composed even in tense, nerve-wracking situations, never showing any signs of stress or discomfort. She doesn't say much, not because she can't, but because she can't be bothered to. While Bocchi frantically struggles to spark a conversation, convinced that the silence is unbearable, Ryo remains completely unbothered. For her, quietly enjoying each other's company is perfectly natural, while Bocchi's mind races through countless scenarios, desperate to avoid making a bad impression on her new friend. Introverts are not incapable of social interaction to any degree. They choose to not go out and interact, while the socially anxious would rather be around other people if they could. One stems from managing social energy, while the other one is rooted in a mental health condition. Being alone is not their choice, but their only option. Ryo is a loner. Bocchi is just alone. Social anxiety does not have to have a specific trigger to develop. Some people are simply predisposed to it, either through environmental factors such as observing other people struggling socially, or through genetic factors, including family members with similar tendencies. In Bocchi's case, it's never stated where her anxiety stems from. Even when brief glimpses of her childhood are shown, she already exhibits a cautious withdrawal from social engagement rather than being excluded or rejected by other people. Her family is supportive and a safe environment for her, where she struggles the least when it comes to communicating, and no other direct traumatic event is shown or explained. It's a piece of information that in the end isn't very important. Leaving it unanswered just includes more people to relate to her, no matter what their own reason is. But it also opens up for more interesting theories connected to her overall behavior. Let's talk about dissociation. Dissociation is the mental process of disconnecting from one's thoughts, feelings, memories, or sense of identity. It's a safety mechanism in your brain that happens as a response to prolonged stress or overwhelming situations. A way to cope with the intense pressure suddenly presented instead of crumbling to pieces. Bocchi disassociates a lot. And I mean a lot. Her mind has always been under a lot of pressure and stress because of her exaggerated self-awareness. From her point of view, every aspect of her existence, how she breathes, walks, or speaks, is under constant judgment from others. This relentless self-judgment, combined with her already low self-esteem, likely contributes to her tendency to dissociate in situations that overwhelm her. Which is all of them. In both good or bad situations, she runs off to her own little world where anything said is taken way out of proportion. For example, when she's told that she sucks at the guitar, she immediately assumes beheading, but when she's praised to any extent, she thinks she's the next Freddie Mercury. This is why it's possible that Bocchi's dissociative tendencies extend even to the potential root cause of her social anxiety. Her mind may have blocked out a triggering event to protect her from lingering trauma, sealing off that specific memory. Because of her extreme dissociation, she also tends to disappear when she doesn't want to. You will catch her in almost any of her conversations, just standing there, looking, as the other person keeps on rambling on, almost like she's disinterested or disengaged from the conversation. But that couldn't be further from the truth. Bocchi is actually hyper-engaged in the conversation, but responding entirely within her own mind. Years of internal dialogue have conditioned her to mentally converse rather than speak out loud. This habit leads to numerous instances where her bandmates point out her silence, prompting her to repeat herself despite believing she already responded. Even when reading her comments on her not YouTube videos, she mentally responds without typing a reply. Her dissociation becomes particularly evident during her first meeting with Nijika, where she's rendered completely speechless simply because it had been so long since she had to say something that was not in her own mind. Bocchi's overreactions, like turning into a low poly render and smashing into a wall of cubes, or glitching in and out of reality, are creative visual metaphors that convey her overwhelming emotions in a comedic and over-the-top manner. These visualizations represent her dissociative tendencies, illustrating what her mind fabricates in place of the actual events she experiences. If this anime would be a realistic depiction of what it's like to have social anxiety, I would understand the hate the show receives. It would be like watching secondhand embarrassment, but if it was streamed on Netflix. I am not here to glaze the show, but I'm honest when I say that I did not experience any secondhand embarrassment, and reading other people's opinions, it seems like I'm mostly alone in this. And it's not like I'm immune to it either, because there are shows that I couldn't finish just because of the pure torture of watching a socially inept character for 12 episodes plus 2 OVAs.
What group's he working on?
Pretty much everything. Yeah, is that right? I guess that includes the butt muscles too, huh?
The main reason I think I didn't experience this with a show like Bocchi is just because of the comedic and exaggerated choices of representation. Turning into a chibi Godzilla from the mere thought of starting a social media account was not something I went, ew, cringe at, but rather found amusing because how over the top and stupid it was. The humor disarmed what could have possibly been very painfully awkward moments. Bocchi is awkward. Yes, that is literally her whole thing, and I understand if people don't like these types of characters, I'm usually on your side. But the anime presents her struggles in such a lighthearted, humorous way without making fun of or invalidating what she feels. This balance makes her character compelling and adds value to the overall story. It's a portrayal that invites empathy without relying on pity or discomfort. People around Bocchi don't judge her negatively because of her struggle to express herself and often welcome her with open arms even if she's not ready to take that step yet. This choice of narrative is different from most other shows about socially anxious characters where we portray the world as the hostile environment filled with ridicule and rejection. Then you have a clear trigger to why said character is struggling to express themselves. They face a world that seems antagonistic due to their social struggles, find a group of people who accepts them, and finally transform, leaving their socially awkward self behind. An easy narrative to follow to express that the world isn't as cruel as they might have thought, but also extremely simplified. In Bocchi's case, her real adversary is herself. Her anxiety isn't fueled by external hostility, but by her own self-deprecating thoughts. Every situation that triggers her anxiety comes from her own over-exaggeration in her mind. Overanalyzing situations, falling short in conversations, and becoming too overwhelmed when she finally chooses to commit. She enters every interaction with the mindset that she is not normal and should be treated differently based on that. When Kita offered genuine praise to her, Bocchi's immediate internal response was, "She is saying nice things about me. What a nice person." Bocchi assumes that Kita's kindness is extraordinary, as though someone like her doesn't deserve simple compliments. The lack of interaction and her excessive isolation only adds to her incapability of knowing what normal conversation looks like. Especially getting presented with the literal sun as one of your first friends, it can be overwhelming and even feel fake because it's so far from the image you painted about how other people would treat you. Even through all this, the show never tries to push her into a corner and say laugh at her or put her in a spotlight where she is the odd one out. Maybe it's because of how vastly different all the band members are that she is not even the oddest one there. It's definitely this.
ぼっちのパンツが
If we go back one final time and look at the main critique again, there is a big group of people who are certain that there's no person alive that is this socially awkward in real life, which is just incorrect. The reason you haven't interacted with them is, guess what? Because they don't leave their house. Bocchi's nickname is derived from the combination of her first name Hitori and the word Bocchi, which creates the term Hitori Bocchi, which means all alone or forever alone, made up by our very own elite Yamada Ryo.
一人ぼっちぼっちちゃんはまたデリケートなところを
In Japan, there is another term for individuals who experience severe social withdrawal, hikikomori. This term refers to people who have entirely withdrawn from society, often taking extreme measures to avoid any kind of social interaction. Hikikomori individuals can sometimes stay confined to their homes for years, refusing to leave and avoid any form of communication with the outside world. Guess what Bocchi does? Leaves her house! To say that there's nobody as socially awkward as Bocchi is just plainly wrong. Bocchi is a reflection of a very real subset of people who, despite their deep-rooted fears, recognize their struggles and still attempt to change instead of actively seeking confinement. Putting herself in situations she knows will overwhelm her, hoping that by doing so, she will gradually overcome her anxiety and inch closer to the version of herself she wishes to become. The whole reason she even picked up a guitar to begin with was because she thought that music would allow her to become that big star in a rock band even with her disorder. Desperately clinging on to this one thing like it was her last chance to actually make some friends, which she managed to. The difference is that she believed that music would fix something she saw as broken, even though it was never necessary to begin with. The story of Bocchi the Rock is not one for everybody. Living through this deeply socially anxious girl navigating the complexities of everyday life for 12 straight episodes is not what many would call their perfect Friday night, but is also not trying to appeal to everyone. In a media landscape saturated with overproduced mainstream content where we get things like 10 isekai anime per season, the 12th spin-off of Breaking Bad and another Marvel movie with a under 50% score on Rotten Tomatoes, Bocchi stands out as its own niche. It is, in contrast, deeply personal and specific. It focuses on the kind of story that many may have no interest in, but for those it does resonate with, it becomes something so important. To me and many more, Bocchi is a character we can relate to in many different ways. She embodies the struggles that many people face in their daily lives dealing with social anxiety, and her small victories feel monumental because they mirror the real, sometimes invisible challenges that people experience every day. Did Bocchi change that much in the end? Did she fix the part of herself she considered broken? The answer is no. She realized that it's okay to not be normal. The world doesn't require her to be an outgoing social butterfly to find happiness and can still share special moments together with her friends. Gotou Hitori realized that maybe she wasn't broken after all.